At the first crack of dawn, a Paiute elder, a woman in her senior years, a grandmother, stepped into the circle around the fire. She told the firekeeper, who had been holding the sacred fire for 3 days, "I'm having prayers. You can join me." She carried a shell with water from the sacred lake of her people, Pyramid Lake, and 2 branches of sage. She tapped the sage into the water and aspersed Firekeeper from the top of his head to his feet and back up, while singing a beautiful prayer in the language of her ancestors. When she finished her prayer, she told Firekeeper, "Thank you for your fire." She left the fire circle and returned to the room she had slept in, so far away from home, for 3 nights. He did not need to understand her words sung in the prayer. He simply knew that he had been extravagantly blessed. The firekeeper did not always know he was a firekeeper. Sure, he knew it at birth and in his early childhood, like all children who remembered the special time in the presence of the great mystery before their journey through the birth canal. Firekeeper knew as a boy the most important things, but that knowing went unnoticed, unheard, during 22 years of active addiction. As a boy, telling the truth mattered. When he told something not true, he got a stomachache and found himself miserable until he fessed up and corrected the lie. Children are born with an inner knowing of the way people should treat each other. Children know within that their existence is in the folds of an interconnectedness with all of life. Even if children haven't heard or read a rule, they know it's wrong when someone wrongs them or when they witness it happening to another. As an older boy, Firekeeper developed a constant companion with worry. He worried mostly about things over which he had no responsibility. He had an overdeveloped sense of responsibility and did not recognize his limits. Worry consumed his thoughts. Worry stole the prospect of everyday joy and serenity. One day, in his 14th year of life, 2 older boys introduced him to the spirits known as alcohol. Many use these spirits as a temporary way to have fun. The very first time Firekeeper imbibed in these spirits, it gave him something that he had not previously been able to give himself. These spirits gave him the ability to not worry for a small passage of time. This seemed to be of great value. The voice within, the voice of the original self that had spent that wonderful time with great mystery before birth, warned Firekeeper about these spirits. Original self told Firekeeper that this kind of power, this false medicine, would bring evil consequences into Firekeeper's life. It would also bring pain and suffering into the lives of his relations. But Firekeeper desired the temporary freedom from worry so deeply that he developed character traits that allowed him to ignore his his original self. A boy who once could not live with a lie learned how to lie well. He learned to not be present to the inner pleadings of his original self. Thus began his addiction. 22 years of destruction and 22 years of not knowing who he truly was led him farther and farther away from the essence, potential, and purpose he was born to manifest. Firekeeper lied so well and so frequently that he began to experience the curse of believing his own lies. He lived so much in his head, isolated more and more from others. He did this so often that he lost contact with his heart. Life became a series of uncomfortable interludes between one drinking episode and the next. He developed a keen sense of irritability toward others. He allowed himself to mistreat people who he perceived as being in his way. Anger, envy, and resentment occupied his relationships. He grew to hate others, and in doing so, began to hate his life as well. His wife and children suffered severely from his absence, even when he was physically there. They lived in a state of terror. His children were afraid of the rattle of his tail as he shape-shifted from man to angry rattlesnake, poised to strike. Even though his eyes were open, he could not or would not see their terror. Maybe it's fair to say that their fear gave him a sense of illusionary power. 3 generations ago, in his maternal ancestry, there was a very real fear of being known. It was illegal for his great-grandmother's Cherokee identity to be exposed because she did not live on the reservation. The fear, the hiding, the secret, the worry passed through the next 2 generations, even though the source of the worry had become obscured. The dispossession and distortion through secrecy that led to ignorance and shame manifested itself in the form of worry, inordinate and overdeveloped worry in the Firekeeper as a boy, then as an adolescent, and as an adult. The effect of the spirits we call alcohol was his idol. He clearly functioned as his higher power. And like truth tells us, the inevitable result of an idolatrous higher power is existential disappointment. So after living 22 years in the curse of an addiction, the false power of this idolatrous higher power could no longer provide him that sense of relief. It shook him to the core. He lived in an earthbound abyss. The truth, as much of it as he could handle at that point in his life, came in a vision. The vision was a series of rapid flashbacks. The flashbacks revealed to him the fear on the faces of his children that he had taught himself to not see. The impact of those flashbacks exposed the false character and nature of his higher power that he saw it in these spirits. The first healing circles Firekeeper attended seemed to reflect the images of flames flickering in a fire. The people who populated the circles were people like Firekeeper, people whose original self have been brutally shoved under the surface. In these circles, people were keeping a sacred fire, welcoming one and all, drawn to the promise of illumination and warmth. In his own quest to find original self, Firekeeper acknowledged the gift of so many perspectives with gratitude. No longer did he grip and defend his own previously decided conclusions. He discovered that honesty, openness, and willingness would be his new companions on the journey. They would be his guides. To be sure, this new character of his relationship to his rediscovered higher power, the great mystery he knew before birth, seemed awkward, but also comforting. His reconnecting relationship with others and his original self asked new behaviors of him. He had to teach himself to ask for help. This was very hard to do. Firekeeper deeply regrets that his grandfather did not see him move out of active addiction, but he is eternally grateful that his grandmother did. As he sat in the circles, he became aware of his primal truth. He discovered the gift of the truth of his ancestry and moved away from shame toward the health of self-knowledge. In the circles, he began to see visions of the sacred fire through the eyes of his heart. Through the eyes of his heart, he could see that the sacred fire pointed beyond itself to something far more powerful, far more significant, with which it participated. The sacred fire pointed to the great mystery we call God. He learned that a sacred circle is sacred and capable of healing in its center, where the fire burns. He learned that the necessary tension between enlightenment, represented by the East, and introspection, represented by the West, produces truth in the tension. He learned that innocence and trust, represented by the South, and healthy tension with the wisdom of the elders, represented by the North, produces and keeps alive the truth in its tension. He learned that the four cardinal directions are grounded by the earth they stand upon and are inspired by the direction above. These 6 directions, north, south, east, west, above, and below, all intersect and find ultimate meaning in the last of the 7 sacred directions, the center, the sacred fire. He came to see these 7 directions, their relationship with each other, is symbolized by the 7 arrows that are common to the balance of life, the medicine wheel. Firekeeper is a grandfather today. His joy is profoundly seated in gratitude for the gifts of the circles and the warmth and illumination of the sacred fire. In that awareness, he discovered that serenity is not a utopia devoid of problems and challenges. Serenity is realized in a life lived facing and walking through the daily challenges. Always sufficient with the tools he has available to him on any given day. Through honesty, openness, and willingness, Firekeeper has discovered much to be thankful for, and purpose in sharing the wealth he has gleaned in the harvesting of the grief of so much devastation. At the close of the 4-day gathering, he served as firekeeper, he struggled with a way to provide meaning in the act of extinguishing the fire. When the time arrived, so did his sister, the rain. His first ceremonial fire was extinguished when the breath of great mystery we call the wind pushed a helpful cloud over the fire to release its life-giving water. The firekeeper did not need to know the mechanics of how that occurred to understand again that he had been extravagantly blessed.